Have a committee, hold on, wait, push it.
The House Appropriation Committee and Subcommittee License and Regulatory Affairs and Insurance and Financial Service will come to order. Clerk, will you please take roll for today?
Chair Beeson.
Here.
Representative Steele. Here. Van Workum.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Snyder.
I'm here.
Mr. Chair, all members present, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Rep. McKinney moves to approve the minutes on May 8th, Subcommittee 2025. With no hearing or no objective, the minutes are adopted. This is a fun day today, and we're glad to be here at work on a Thursday morning. Testimony today is going to come from our Glenn Rowley, our supervisor from Bangor Township. Can you come up, Glenn, and give your presentation, please?
Excuse me. Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and representatives, my name is Glenn Rowley, and I am the supervisor of beautiful Bangor Township. I'm going to be giving you some information regarding the marijuana industry from a municipality perspective, and I apologize. I just wrote this yesterday, so I will do this with little or no eye contact. Beautiful Bangor Township was the second municipality in the state of Michigan to approve medical marijuana. That decision was not taken lightly. A lot of research went into it. Our main factors to consider were safety and economic development. We knew that our residents were already purchasing the products, so we'd much rather that they purchase a safe product from a designated facility, a much better option than out of the back of a van behind a Walmart. We also needed a financial rewards from being a handsome host to the industry. Diving into our general fund reserves for the preceding 2 years and being on the brink of state receivership forced our hand into partnering with this industry. And I have absolutely no regrets. We have great partners in the community. Old abandoned buildings were made pretty and occupied. The value of property increased at an incredible rate, and we saw a major economic boom. They provided jobs, a tax base, a sought-after product that have embraced our community, sponsoring our sports teams, providing a new gym floor to the high school, and numerous other examples of support. We also have a solid stream of revenue from our share of the excise tax and annual permits. In fact, not only did we not have to tap into our financial reserves, we were also able to address our infrastructure needs and pave some roads, which is a big deal right now in the state of Michigan. Something that has not been done in many years. Last year we received $756,972 as our share. The previous year we received $886,295. That's quite a chunk of change, and it has the equivalent of the township getting a second job. That is a huge turnaround and a far cry from the days when then businessman Beeson and I were discussing fundraiser dinners to help the township pay its bills. What was once a wild, wild west gold rush like thriving industry has now calmed down. Business world Darwinism and the laws of supply and demand have caused some of the players to shut down. Lower market prices have made profitability challenging. Please remember, this industry is not a Cheech and Chong movie. These are business professionals. Now is not the time to impose new taxes or fees on them. Now is not the time to introduce new regulations that will further hamper their ability to not only survive, but thrive. Something that we should want for all of our businesses in this great state. The economic benefits of this industry are very well documented. Strangling the goose that lays the golden eggs is a terrible idea, and I advise you not to traverse down that path. I will give you a real-world example of our state's overregulation. I have a fabulous state representative in Chairman Beeson. Unfortunately, it's as a result of the state's overreach. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoy working with Representative Beeson, but governmental overreach caused me to lose my butcher, a business that paid taxes, employer to our citizens, provided a fabulous product, feeder of our families, and a pillar of the business community. I spend a great deal of time focusing on economic development in the Great Lakes Bay Area. We have received many new developments from multiple industries, especially the technology and silicone chip industry, many of which are receiving strong financial incentives from the state of Michigan. Please do not give the marijuana industry the exact opposite level of support. In beautiful Bangor Township, the marijuana-related businesses are not just our taxpayers and building occupants. They're our community partners, and we give each other the utmost support. I hope that LARA and the state of Michigan will do the same. I thank you for the time, for your service to we the people, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And I am still doing some brats on the side up at the other location to take care of this. But let's go back to what it looked like to my business before the pot companies came and how you guys had to figure out a way to even cover the revenue from the fire department that had to go to the businesses, right?
Yeah, we are blessed to have a full-time fire department in beautiful Bangor Township, but it comes at a cost. They were 54% of my total budget. We all know that Headley has made it so we're limited to the amount of money that we're able to collect, and it wasn't just keeping up with inflation at all. We are the county's largest township, but we are the second smallest tax base. We don't charge a lot of taxes. It's a great place to live. Unfortunately, when we don't have the money coming in taxes, we're limited to what we can spend or provide to the people. So we were in a really tough spot. We had 2 years where we struggled to pay our bills. We went into our financial reserves, rainy day funds. It stormed for 2 years, and we were looking at bake sales. We were looking at car washes to fund the fire department. It was a hot mess for a while.
And I do remember doing the fundraisers with the fire department just to buy them new equipment, and that's how it got to. My question is you said that we've decreased, it sounded like about $100,000 from 1 year, almost $100,000 or over?
It is a decrease. And,
Yeah.
and what we found, and this is great. We need money to survive, and this industry made great money. But there's a lot more players now, supply and demand. So now the cost of this product has come down. So we look at the excise tax, and here's the big pile of money, and we're just going to divvy it up based upon the number of retail establishments that you have. Well, they're selling more product. They're just not collecting as much money because the prices have gone down.
Do you see the future, even with more regulation like they did, what's the chances of this getting down to a point where the revenue is in the fives or the fours or the threes, 100,000? What's that do to a township like Bangor?
Well, it's going to financially devastate us. But the biggest concern that I have is these business people who are very smart people. They know exactly what they need to do, how much product they need to make and sell to remain profitable. But you keep strangling them, they're going to go back to the black market. So we know that the product sales are still great. We only get the numbers of people that are buying a registered product through licensed facilities. We don't have any numbers on selling them out of the back of a van illegally, black market. If we could put a number on those, I'm sure those would be skyrocketing. And as we continue to squeeze these professional business people, they're going to leave the professional way of doing business.
So even the buildings that we have left, even with the pot companies leaving, the independent small ones, right? What do those buildings look like compared to, say, some old meat market?
They were made very, very pretty. The other thing that it gave a huge tax base because commercial and industrial property was selling for, at the time, 10 times what it was. So we had a great 5-year ride on that. It's starting to come down. So it was great while it was there. We made a lot of infrastructure, but it's calmed down. Those buildings are now pretty buildings, and they're ready for their new use. In this particular industry, this was a great economic high five. But now we have other industries that are coming in. Those new buildings are now occupied with tenants that are not in this industry. So this really propelled us into a good position where we're at right now.
Question, Rep. McKinney?
Thank you, Chair Beeson, and thank you so much for being here today in Lansing and your presentation. Very powerful words, and I can tell that you really mean what you're talking about. There's a potential opportunity in a deal that's going to be cut here, at least in this session, around road funding. And, you know, I've talked to a lot of our members in the cannabis industry, and there's a potential idea to tax the industry more to fund our roads. What is your, you know, take on that, and what is it going to do to our industry here in our state?
Well, you're already taxing the heck out of them, and when you're not taxing them, you are financially strangling them by making them buy more licenses than any other business would have to have. So you're already getting your fair share out of them. I would, yeah, do we need to pay for roads and find funding? Absolutely. Picking on this industry is not the way. And usually in society, we compare this industry to the bar or entertainment industry. Why are we just going after this marijuana industry versus the bar industry? Why do they have to pay twice as many fees and taxes than they do than the others? So it's, yeah, do we need money for road funding? Absolutely. But to come out of this thriving business, that's a bad idea, because you'll turn this business into a non-thriving business, and then it will just go away. So then we'll lose the money to pay for roads, we'll lose the industry that's providing jobs and taxes, and then we'll have nothing.
1 second. Rep. Steele?
I think it'll go back to the vans to sell it, but I'm not sure if I understand how the proposed taxes work on the actual process of it. Like, what was the proposal? Maybe you know, or somebody can explain it.
Rep. McKinney?
So I believe it was introduced, or somebody was talking about in the in the course of things, potential tax on the industry, and I know that's on the table in terms of discussions. So I'm not sure where it's at. I'm not privy to that information, but I do know from talking to business owners in my district and other folks in the cannabis industry that a tax is considered or will be levied potentially in this road deal that is being discussed.
And we're going to actually discuss, we're going to have two other that will actually hit on that a little bit, like where they, yes. Yeah. Rep. Snyder?
Yeah, thank you for your testimony, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that, in my opinion, that from the knowledge that I'm aware of, Michigan has some of the lowest taxation on the industry in the country in states that have legalized it. So with that being said, and I think the conversation has been about replacing the excise tax with a wholesale tax, but what is the population of your township?
We are 14,000 people.
14,000 people. And do you have both grow facilities and dispensaries, or what is?
I have very few grow facilities, just because I really have a very small amount of industrial property. I have 0 agriculture property. So I believe I have 13 retail facilities. I have a large testing lab that's there, and I do have a few grow facilities.
So you have 13 facilities and a population of a township of 14,000.
Yep.
So with that, have you seen in your township some of these industries or some of these grows or dispensaries going bankrupt or into receivership because of the what we've seen? I know I've seen in Muskegon. I think we've had 5 close in the last 6 months or so because of the oversaturation of the industry with the amount of how many of these facilities exist.
Yeah, and I don't know if their closing was a bankruptcy or receivership, or hey, or much like on Saginaw Bay, I'm not, I'm not catching any fish here, I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Thank you. And then, last question, the bridges that you're always talking about, Mr. Chairman, are they in Bangor Township?
No, they're not. They're in the city of Bay City.
Because I was thinking maybe we could use some of that money to buy those.
If
as
you wanted, that
talked
was,
about.
we want to talk about it. That was the the Senator Kristen Rivet, not before me, that did that, not me.
So I just wanted, just a question about that. Thank you.
Yes.
Say that the standing joke that we have is now that we can spend money on roads that we would, paint the roads green for the revenue share we got from this industry, so.
Rep. Van Workum?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you guys have a cap on how many dispensaries you have?
We had a cap, once again being the second one in the state to do it. We were making our ordinance up as we went, so we did have a cap. But then we realized that we did not have a true method for deciding which companies could do business in the township or not. So if we denied somebody, they could come back and say, why did you deny us? So then it just turned into, all right, as long as they, meet all the other legal requirements, we're gonna let everybody in. And then let the law of supply and demand dictate where it's gonna happen. And with that, the number never exceeded what our initial cap of 15 was.
Do you have a designated area in which that they can have a dispensary?
Yes. And that's just following the state guidelines.
Is it like the main street? Is it outside the township?
It's
Where
in
is it?
our main streets.
Main Street. And do you have any other townships or cities that also allow dispensaries, or are you the only area in town?
The neighboring city, the city of Bay City, also has allows this. The number of facilities that they have is equal to ours. The bordering townships do not.
Okay. Because I've seen in areas, particularly near maybe the Indiana border, where they have unlocked and don't have a cap, that dispensaries have taken over the entire town. In fact, many people who used to live on a nice, say, coastal area no longer recognize their town because of the amount of dispensaries that have come in, no longer want to live there. Because everyone from Indiana or Chicago has come in because they did not cap how many dispensaries they have, and has caused issues where longtime residents no longer recognize their home, and it's been overtaken by dispensaries and people coming in and buying the dispensaries. So I think there is a issue here of how to still allow them, but still keep the character of a town that you've grown up in and you've invested in all your life. So I understand it's worked well for Bangor, but there's other areas in the state where it has not worked as well.
Thank you for that story, and that is a perfect example of why nobody knows local zoning better than local. So in that particular case, their planning commission, their people, they will find out what this community will stomach. And when I say we put a lot of time and energy into, is it right for us? We looked at we went to the polls, and the 57% of the voters approved medical marijuana. We did an online poll through MLive, and we found that 70-some% would be interested in this. So in beautiful Bangor Township, we the people thought it was a good fit. That's not a good fit everywhere. And my guess is when a community is totally overtaken by this, once again, supply and demand, or maybe a very poorly written ordinance. And I'll be the first to raise my hand. I have a really poorly written ordinance because I was one of the first and we were making it up as we went. Terrible way to do it.
Thank you so much, Glenn, for being here. And I do believe in anywhere you want to go, if you want to fix it, you got to start at the local level. Coming here with a state mandate, it just hurts business. It hurts. We regulate them to the point where they are overwhelmed. So I thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you all very much.
I can put my glasses back on. Okay. Testimony next from Denise Palasila. Oh, managing partner for the Cannabis Attorneys of Michigan. Please go ahead with your presentation.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. My name is Denise Policella. I'm a partner in National Cannabis Practice Group Chair at Omnis Law, and I'm in my 29th year of practice as a Michigan licensed attorney. I'm a lifelong Michigander, proud graduate of University of Michigan Ann Arbor and Wayne State Law. I have a corporate background as a vice president of and general counsel for Child Time Learning Centers. I specialize in business transactions, corporate governance, and regulatory law. And since 2009, I've represented small businesses in the Michigan licensed cannabis industry. I did found and own Cannabis Attorneys of Michigan for 15 years, and I assisted in drafting and lobbying for the MMFLA. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today on the state of Michigan cannabis industry and particularly its regulation and taxation. The state of Michigan does not support its licensed cannabis industry, full stop. It heavily regulates and taxes a still relatively new industry, operating without a safety net, and does nothing to support it or protect it. When I say no safety net, I mean that cannabis companies and their owners have no bankruptcy protection because cannabis is still federally illegal. They have limited access to traditional business services that most business owners take for granted. Insurance, banking fees, mortgages, loans are exorbitantly many times more expensive than they are for any other type of business. And this despite the fact that cannabis is a legal good in commerce in Michigan. Exacerbating this problem is the complete lack of enforcement of the illicit black market marijuana activity in the state of Michigan, which has allowed the continuous and large supply of black market marijuana flowing into Michigan, some of which undoubtedly does make it into the licensed industry. This marijuana is untested and unsafe in every way that the licensed industry was meant to combat. And it creates an unstable market suffering from significant oversupply, keeping prices deflated and driving more and more companies out of business. And the licensed businesses are being taxed out of existence. Certainly tax revenue is and remains an excellent inducement to allowing the commercial manufacturing and retail sale of marijuana. However, the taxes on the industry are entirely too oppressive because cannabis businesses are subject to Internal Revenue Code 280E, meaning that they cannot take any ordinary business deductions on their tax returns, making their effective tax rates many times higher than that of any non-cannabis business. To add insult to injury, the CRA is the only agency in the state of Michigan which requires its licensee to clear its state of Michigan Treasury bill in full before renewing its license. In other words, a voluntary tax payment plan with the state, which any other business in Michigan can utilize, is not available to the only industry in Michigan that has no bankruptcy protection and higher federal taxes than any other industry. I would also like to briefly address the rep's statement that Michigan cannabis businesses have a relatively low tax rate compared to other states. That is absolutely true. The issue in Michigan is that we do not cap our licenses at the state level, and municipalities very often don't cap their licenses, like I think New Buffalo, maybe you were referencing. In other states where the taxes are much higher, they have basically legislated monopolies in the cannabis space, where they have maybe 10 or 12 operators total. So they have a significant amount of support from their states, and they just make more money. Finally, they're being oppressively overregulated. Director Hanna was appointed fairly with the broad mandate of increasing enforcement, and he's done a great job. However, because the scope of the CRA's authority lies only within the licensed industry, all of their enforcement efforts are focused only on the licensed industry, and there does not seem to be any effort at balance here. Their default position is that everyone is a criminal, and we are going to catch and punish every one of you. To be clear, this has been its default position since before it was even the MRA. I'll give you a couple of examples. When the first emergency regulations came out in 2019, and I was there were regulations that were not always clear. They were new. That's fairly common. We would call and ask for assistance trying to figure out how to implement those rules at the facility level. And they would come out and help us, and then 3 to 6 months later, we'd get a violation on that exact thing that we had asked for help on. My first instinct, having worked in regulated childcare and regulated liquor licensing, was to counsel my clients to self-report violations. But unfortunately, I haven't been saying anything about self-reporting violations anymore because all that does is prompt more compliance violations. The CRA unfortunately doesn't distinguish between innocent mistakes that busy, regulated businesses make and nefarious conduct of criminals. There's no middle ground, and even though the licensed cannabis industry does have good and bad operators, I'm sure, it just doesn't seem that there's much of a middle ground, and the licensees are starting to feel punished. The fines are also exorbitant. The fines and this type of enforcement disincentivizes compliant behavior, it disincentivizes licensing, and it disincentivizes self-reporting. And that's exactly what has happened. These are endemic, long-standing issues. They're complex, but they haven't been addressed at all. And unfortunately, the industry is starting to check out. These businesses don't feel supported or listened to. They feel punished for attempting to be and stay licensed. They feel overtaxed, and there is no incentive to operating in a compliant manner any longer. And they're seeking alternative areas, meaning they're leaving the state. There are some complex problems here, but there are some simple solutions. One would be to end the requirement that licensees get a treasury tax clearance every year to be licensed. Another may be that we approve licenses every other year instead of every year. Perhaps the AG could ramp up enforcement, or there could be more cooperation. Granted, I don't know what kind of cooperation goes on behind the doors. I'm sure there is. But from the perspective of the business operators, there's still a lot of illegal product in Michigan, and that is forcing their prices down. And then as far as limiting licenses is concerned, I think the industry is pretty split on that, but it may need to happen. Limiting licenses would be one way to support the industry, the ones that are here, and to prevent maybe the overpopulation of licensees in a particular area. But I think that the regulators at the beginning, rightly so, thought that that would be most properly up to the municipalities. However, when you use it as an economic development tool, then you get a lot of retailers and a lot of growers. So there we are. Some very simple steps, though, would go a long way to creating the foundation of support this industry needs to survive and thrive. And we need this industry to thrive. We get a lot of taxes from this industry already, and we are primed to export marijuana throughout the Midwest if and when it ever becomes federally legal. And we must have a strong, regulated, but supported industry in order to compete nationally and to provide us with more taxes. The industry requires robust regulation, but it also requires support. Licensed cannabis has greatly benefited Michigan's economy, not to mention the thousands of people that it has helped who now use medical cannabis without fear of prosecution. The business owners in this industry are, by and large, good people, family people, our fellow Michiganders, and they need our help. They provide jobs that cannot be outsourced, and they manufacture a product that cannot be outsourced. They repurpose blighted buildings in areas nobody else will develop, and they are doing their best in an increasingly hostile environment, and they're losing. The state of Michigan must do a better job of balancing taxation and regulation with support for these businesses in this industry. And thank you for your efforts in this regard and for your time today.
Thank you. I have a few questions before I get. So I didn't know that about that fact that they can't write off their assets. And that right there, if you own a business, and even my son that's starting up his own log business, that's why I'm telling him to do it, to write off his assets, write off his truck, write off his log splitter, like, even though it's an axe because he uses that. But the idea and the insurance and your cars and your vehicles and your property taxes, like and if you add that back in, that's a tax that's just ridiculous to have.
Right. It's not, and that's what I think my point is. It's not one thing. It's sort of the accumulation of all these little things together that is such a financial burden on them. And to be fair, the state of Michigan does allow them to take tax deductions, but the federal taxes are so much larger, and that's where the pain is. And it's the federal government that does not.
Wow. Next, my other concern is we have 902,000 small businesses in the state of Michigan, and I'm kind of curious. You're in that realm. How many of these independent small pot shops do you know off the top of your head? Kind of like how many are out there?
Several thousand at this point. I mean, I've personally licensed over 400.
Okay.
So many thousand.
So that's kind of
point.
so 400, and I'm just thinking like my small business. I had 7 employees. So with the fall of some of these things, it's going to be the fall of some of our jobs. So that's my concern is the small business regulation. They did it at the meat shops. They did it at industrial level. They put us out. That's why you don't have your fellow butchers all across. We did more paperwork than we actually did using a knife. And butchers aren't good at paperwork. They're really good with knife if they have all their fingers, but they're not good at all with the paperwork. It's just very, very time-consuming. So I know that we have some questions. Oh, you have a couple? Well, we'll start with Rep. Steele.
I just want to make a comment. I don't know if anybody realizes that there's $175 million of excise tax that goes into the state budget, and 35% of it does go into the Michigan trunk line, and 35% of it goes into the school aid fund already, FYI.
Thank you. Rep. Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. This committee has heard some talk about the lab testing results and the lab that was state-owned lab that was funded in last year's budget. And there's been legislation that was introduced last year. I don't know if it's been reintroduced yet in front of regulatory reform. But have you been involved in any cases about private cannabis labs skewing test results in response to what this law that has been tried to pass and trying to institute this state-run lab? Are you familiar with anything that's happened at that level? And have you had an experience knowing anyone who's had an unfair experience with any test labs?
I'm aware of what's going on. I'm not personally involved in any litigation regarding the labs. I do get routine, complaints from clients that they have trouble with labs and believe that some labs are skewing results. Now, I don't have any personal evidence of that. And this would probably be better addressed by the CRA. What I can tell you from representing a few labs and being here in this industry for a very, very, very long time is that the labs from the beginning have not shared, collaborated on their process, on their actual parameters for testing, because that's apparently proprietary. So the state lab was probably needed a long time ago simply to make sure that there's a consistent type of lab process and sampling process, because the way I understand it, all the labs do that differently. And when you have a different start, you're going to get a different end, which doesn't make any sense to me, by the way. But,
no, that was
that's
my
the way it is.
understanding as well, that they all have their own process, and streamlining that does make more sense. So I appreciate you answering that. And
Sure.
thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question.
I have a question that kind of leads on that. How, sitting there, have you had some different people that come to you as a lawyer in this field? How about the fines? Are they all consistent? I mean, I'm not trying to ruin your profession.
No.
Because I mean, that's something that you have to be careful. I understand.
Sure. No. I've been vocal about this. I think most of the attorneys in the cannabis space have been pretty vocal about wanting a consistent fine schedule, and we did get it. So in our opinion, it had not been consistent, and the CRA was not able to answer, with any satisfaction how they arrived at their fines. But they did publish a schedule last year. And also with the advent of additional, history in this area of regulatory violations, and those are all published, we can get a better idea of where we are on the spectrum when you have a complaint. So I think that the CRA has made an effort there to have some consistency with the fines. The fines themselves are high. And I am in no way suggesting that this industry should not be regulated. I think regulations are appropriate for an industry where you are particularly manufacturing and retailing a drug. That being said, I think that the regulations themselves tend to be enforced fairly oppressively. I don't know if that is because of the perception of marijuana or the perception of the type of people that are in this industry, or simply, the sort of the bent of the CRA. But what we do get complaints about is how oppressively the regulations are enforced.
And the reason why I asked that is the alternative is kind of what has happened in many areas, especially in the meat industry, the deer processing. Like, we've all went underground, and I'm not saying me, I still am licensed facility, but there are places that are continuing to go underground because they're overwhelmed. And if the fee is too high, instead of working with us to get it down, nobody wants to get somebody sick, right? But on the same side is when you don't have those facilities, folks, there's no more regulation. It's going to happen.
And unfortunately, a lot of the businesses, whether it's fair or not to feel this way, feel like there's not really any incentive to be licensed. Right now, they see down the street illegal dispensaries, illegal growers, and no enforcement happening, and those people are making money, and they have no rules, no taxes, so it gets, after a while. I mean, I think that if this was the second year in the industry, we'd be like, yeah, this is going to work itself out pretty soon, but it hasn't worked itself out. And I think that if you're going to regulate an industry, either regulate it all the way, set the prices, have like liquor control, like regulate it, or not. But when you halfway regulate it like this, and then you still have a very, very robust black market, it's just suffocating the industry. And a lot of this, Michigan has done a great job. I mean, just all over the place, Michigan has done a great job with cannabis. When you go to any other state, I'm very proud to be from Michigan in the cannabis space. And you forget that there are states that haven't done a thing. And some of this is maybe not going to be fixed until cannabis is federally legal and we can start exporting it to other states. Because what is happening in other states on our borders, Wisconsin and Indiana have no cannabis program. So two things are happening, right? Those folks are fully in the black market, and we're exporting there as well. So some of this is just simply a very complex problem. But as far as I believe why we're here, the health of the industry and further taxing it, you're going to kill the industry. They can't take any more taxation. They just can't take it. They're already financially burdened enough.
And I do believe in some great systems where the industry does work well. I've seen it in some areas, and it'd be better to have somebody that wants you to exist and keep going. Otherwise, we have to sit here as legislators and figure out ways to make a budget with less workers. So, McKinney?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for being here. From one Wolverine to another, go blue. I just want to put that out there. But you highlighted some stuff. Despite cannabis being legalized here in our state, and you touched on it, it's definitely illegal federally. Like, what are you seeing in terms of our Michigan licensees and the barriers to financial services and running their businesses day to day? I'm hearing from a lot of our grow owners and dispensary owners that they can only access certain banks, and because of that, they're being taken advantage of, and that's what I'm hearing in terms of like the fees and banking and things of that nature. Have you heard about that? Like, can you shed some light about what's really going on?
About it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even as an attorney in the industry, my bank account had to be a special bank account. I can only get insurance certain places. The people who own these businesses personally have no bankruptcy protection. Think about that for a minute. Some of them can't get a mortgage. So Yeah, they feel, I don't know as far as the banks taking advantage. What is going on with the banks, and people think that it's illegal for a bank to bank a cannabis business. It's not illegal, it's just difficult. It takes a lot more paperwork. They have to file 1 million SARS reports, they're regularly audited, so the amount of additional manpower it takes and regulation it takes to take cannabis money makes it significantly more expensive. I don't know whether or not they're being taken advantage of, but you're absolutely right that there's a very finite number of financial institutions at the state that will take cannabis clients, and it's even worse in insurance. I only know of one insurance company at this point that will insure a cannabis business. Very few, no lenders. The money's kind of dried up. So yeah, and then if another institution like a payroll, like ADP or hopefully they're not watching, finds out that they are serving a cannabis business, they will, close the account. So it's very difficult.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's very difficult. I don't know what the state is going to be able to do about that. We've made cannabis here a legal good in commerce. It's possible that these are national issues. Right now, the hearings that were scheduled in October and November at the federal level last year at HHS have been postponed. They haven't been canceled, they've been postponed. And that was due to some lawsuits, some litigation going on among the folks that were actually trying to get cannabis rescheduled. So if we can get it rescheduled at the federal level down to 3 or even 4 or 5, we'll be in business. But 1 and 2 still subject cannabis businesses to 280E and and the banks, simply the major banks don't want to engage yet, probably because it's regulatorily oppressive for them and they have so much turnover at their branches that they probably can't reasonably regulate it. I don't know if any of you remember the Cole memo, but there was an effort to try to get banking for the industry, and the major banks went to the federal government and basically said, hey, can we get a pass on money laundering charges if we bank the cannabis industry, to which the federal government said no way, and that was kind of the end of the conversation about 15 years ago. So right now we don't really have that solution, but and like I said, it's not just the taxes, it's not just it's sort of the whole picture. They're getting sort of squeezed from all sides. So it's not one particular thing, but more taxes at this point would really destroy the industry.
So the overwhelming, and I'm not being mean, the overwhelming to do business in this, it continues to get tougher, and I think it's the credit unions that are kind of working with you a little bit, right? Because it's still, but that same situation is nobody realizes that until you own that business, trying to do this and feel overwhelmed, and that's one more step. And we in the state here talk about economic development, but we don't look at it as small business economic development because we make it so difficult to get a license, not just in cannabis, in everything. Instead of a state saying, let us show you how to do it, we tell you what you can't do with a fine or a fee. And you guys are going to see it to the point where you won't be profitable, our townships won't be left, right? And then we'll have a missing industry of jobs that we're going to say, oh, we don't know what went wrong. Yeah, we do. We just aren't willing to hit the head and say, department heads, let's make these people profitable. Let's get in there and show them how to be successful instead of, and go ahead. Do you have any?
No, just this is a quick follow-up. You mentioned federal, and that was my next question in terms of, the descheduling or, legalization on federal level, and you touched on it. Where do you know kind of like what is the status of those lawsuits and like when are things going to start moving? Because I would like to get a better sense of like if it's going to actually happen.
I have to confess, I thought it was going to happen a long time ago.
Yeah.
I thought that when we hit, half to 2/3 of the states decriminalizing medical marijuana, that naturally at the federal level something would happen. So, and it's just stalled, and I'm not sure why. The lawsuits seem to be wrapping up. I have been tracking it. I don't know what's next. Okay. But the lawsuits seem to have been wrapped up. So waiting anxiously. I do know that there is a group of cannabis directors of state agencies that do, fairly regularly. I believe Director Hannah's on that at the federal level. There's so much lobbying for it, so I'm not sure what the issue is.
Can you, by chance, explain the wholesale tax? Do you understand the way that is set up right now to go into effect, or no?
I understand what it wants to do, but I haven't read the details, no. I just saw the number.
Okay, all right, I wasn't sure. So that's the next question is what does it look like? And maybe Wojo might be able to explain that, actually, the next people that actually are gonna have to pay this. So is there any other questions for? Thank you so much for your presentation and keeping these little businesses in here in Michigan. That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have testimony from Tyler and John from Wojo, a company close to my home. So I'm excited to hear your testimony.
Thank you, everyone, for having us today. First time that we've ever done this, so bear with us a little bit. Just from our perspective well, first of all, I'm Tyler. I'm the CEO and owner of Wojo. I started my company back in 2010 is when I started as a caregiver. 2008 is when the medical program was enacted in Michigan. And 2010 is when I started doing it just to kind of offset my cost of using cannabis, because I used it more so to help me sleep, anxiety, things like that. And it really worked for me very well, and I fell in love with it. I love what I do every single day. I love my team, the industry as a whole, and a 32% tax would be absolutely detrimental to us as our business, especially we're a year and a half in commercially. So to be a year and a half in as a small business and immediately get hit with a 32% tax would obviously cripple any small business. And really, looking at the proposed rule, it really benefits vertically integrated companies where we're a grow and a processing center. So we do not have retail locations, but I look at it as they're going to give us a 32% tax, take away the 10% excise tax. If I am vertically integrated, I'm charging myself a penny for every single item to send to these stores. Then I'm surpassing that 32% tax, and the 10%'s gone. So to me, it really benefits the out-of-state operators, Loom, the huge companies, not the small companies like ourselves. And we're a very passionate group. I would invite any one of you guys to come check out our facility. Timmy's coming tomorrow. We're located in Pinconning, Michigan. Glenn's from Bangor. He was the second one in the state to pass an ordinance. Pinconning was the first. So Bay County really got on board with this right away. And I know a lot of people talk about, how many retail locations that there are in certain areas. And I completely can see that and am not for that. Moratoriums on licenses in areas should have been put on immediately. Then we wouldn't have this issue with 16 dispensaries in one location. There's as many dispensaries in some areas as there are fast food restaurants, and there's not enough people to support those, and I get that. Looks like Congressman Van Worken mentioned, New Buffalo is an area that is on the Indiana border, also feeds Illinois, Wisconsin, and that area is thriving right now. When we go down there, we call it El Dorado, because it is unreal how many brand new buildings are down there. They're all beautiful. They're rehabbing old buildings. And then also, let's think about the other businesses that are going to get affected by this too. Hotels, people coming from out of state, different restaurants, convenience stores, gas stations. It's not going to just affect us. It will affect every industry across the whole that sees traffic from these areas. And there's obviously, we need money to fix the roads. I just feel like that there's other areas that we could get it from other than just our industry, because we are already very heavily regulated as well. The CRA hands out fines for anything. And they're not just small fines. These are massive thousands of dollar fines for something like self-reporting that we made a clerical error and accidentally wrote in the wrong number for how much grams of marijuana we had reported it to them and told them, hey, we made an issue and we got a $5,000 fine for that. So I guess we could have been better off by just not telling them anything and getting it out of there. And then also, talking about the black market, with this, the black market would absolutely thrive. I lived through the black market. I was there through the whole thing. I saw it. Why I chose to take this route was because I wanted to do this for the rest of my life, and I wanted to support my friends and give people jobs in my area, and we've done that. We have 57 employees, and we started with one. I was the very first one, and from there, we are a 20-time award-winning brand. We sell the second most concentrates in the state of Michigan, and Representative Snyder brought up, how our taxes are lower than a lot of other states, and they are. And that is a great thing for Michigan because we pull people from other states. If you look at where the sales are, New Buffalo, Monroe, Menominee, all border areas, we're taking money from other states and bringing it into our state, which obviously is part of what we're supposed to be doing, right? We want to help our state. Let's take money from other areas and feed our people.
Okay.
I did want to mention, too, that I haven't really read anything about them talking about getting rid of the 10% excise tax. So I read it that it was going to be 32% on wholesale. That could be incorrect. But like Tyler had said, it'll negatively impact someone like us that doesn't have storefronts, much greater than other facilities. There's over 38,000 employees currently in the marijuana industry in Michigan. I myself came from a director background at a pediatric therapy clinic, and this is honestly the best job I've ever had. Like we said, we have 57 full-time employees that offer health insurance and more PTO than I've ever been able to access in any industry. And I would hate to see this 32% tax absolutely decimate the industry. If we were able to collect $331 million, $116 million went to roads, $116 million went to schools. That's already a huge shot in the arm to Michigan's economy that the industry has been able to provide, and along with those jobs. And if this was to be passed and there was a large reduction in that 38,000 employees from the state of Michigan, those people are going to have a hard time finding new jobs. They're going to have a hard time making their bills and paying their mortgages. So like Tyler said, for all the other industries, all the ancillary industries that benefit from this industry, there'll also be a great reduction in just the ability for people to own their homes and support their children and live their lives as they have been able to do that this industry has given. So that's definitely one thing that I'm concerned about.
Well, I'm really glad that you guys are here testifying because small businesses start with one person, two people, right? And they grow. I know your facility. My scare is the idea that they want to put it like a monopoly or too many, right? You've actually said it. You feel like they should have a limit, and that's what's happening in this area, right? But it comes down to zoning. If you have that set up right in your local ordinances where it's at, us stopping it here at the state, that's what happened to the liquor licenses, and you know how hard those are to get, and the cost is going up on one of those, right, where a license in the state of Michigan is worth a value. And there's something to be said about that when you can make money on something that the state holds as a value. So I'm kind of concerned about that. What do you think that you would have to get integrated? You would have to then create your own to figure out a way around the system? Is that what I kind of heard that a little bit. That's the next step, right? They're going to make it so it's tougher for you guys to work around the system with the excise tax?
Well, like I said, the way that we understand it would be if we had storefronts. I don't know if they would change the rules to where they wouldn't allow people to charge a penny to themselves. But even if I was a grow processor and storefronts, then I would at least charge, instead of say $1,200 for a case of vape pens, I could charge myself $200 or $300, something that still seems reasonable, but greatly reduce that price, take the hit there, but then to make it up on the back end, which licensees like us do not have that ability.
Okay, and I do recommend anybody to see your facility. It's something to see. I'm going to see it for the first time, but even the mass of what it looks like when you drive by, it's pretty impressive. So, any questions? Rep. McKinney?
One good thing I would like to say too is that our per square footage in Pinconning, we're the highest property tax per square footage of any building in Pinconning, Michigan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you both for being here. Well, just two quick questions. One, can you state your name for the
Oh,
record?
sorry, yep. My name is John Wegener. I'm the compliance manager at Wojo
Great.
LLC.
Just wanted to put that out there for
Thank
people
you.
who are reviewing it. And then, two, you mentioned like towards the end of your comments around like vape pens and all that stuff. So I'm working on legislation right now. I worked on it last term, working on it this term, surrounding the hemp-derived products. And
That's another issue.
it's an issue with these kids getting a hold of it, minors being sold. And these are like unlicensed facilities that are doing this, right? A lot of my area, either hookah lounges or, the gas stations, the liquor stores who are doing this, who are selling these vape pens with all of this stuff in it that these kids don't even realize they're inhaling and taking. And so, what in your view can the state do to, try to balance this, to limit that from happening? Because it's not only impacting your business, but it's making the whole industry look terrible.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And so my knowledge on the hemp, the Farm Bill of 2018 is somewhat limited, but the way I understand it is that the places that are doing this type thing are claiming that the THC content is 0.3% or less, but that's actually not true. So they're more or less just masquerading around that these products are lower than 0.3% THC, and they're not. And then, but like you said, they're not doing any of the required testing. Our facility, we use very, very few, no chemicals whatsoever to process ours. We're not technically organic, but we use reverse osmosis water and nutrients to feed our plants, and I would say that it's probably the healthiest product you could possibly get on the Michigan market at this time. And that comes at a huge cost. Things that we don't cut corners on and pay thousands of dollars a month for, over $100,000 a year in testing, over $100,000 a year in licensing for our 3 Class C licenses and our 1 processor license. All those operators, they're not. They're doing it completely illegal. It's just there's not the manpower. It seems like there's just not the manpower to be able to really crack down on it.
Thank you. And that's another thing is that you guys, how hard is it to sell our product outside of Michigan?
Currently, we can't.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Do you have any questions, Rep. Snyder? Van Workum? Oh, Rep. Steele?
Just a reminder that we do pay 35% of the excise tax does go to the road fund already. So I just clarify for our committee members. But that wholesale tax, can't the retailer absorb it as well too on both ends, like a transfer tax for real estate?
I feel like most of that's going to get absorbed by the consumer because we're going to have their prices, so it'll get passed on to the consumer, which is going to probably take our sales from 3.1 billion down to at most 1. Because if you look at those border states, that is where a majority of our sales are going in the state of Michigan.
Do you guys, sorry to keep asking quick questions, do you guys help anybody else, like local fellow shops? Do you guys mentor anybody? I know that you have a lot of friends in the Bay County area, and we do have a few in Bangor Township that are in that same area. Do you guys have an organization, or do you guys get together like us meat shops do?
We do not have anything right now. One thing that when Matthew Beerline came to our facility last month that we talked with him is like the Plumbers Association has a group of plumbers that sit on that to be able to, pass different laws and make sure everything is fair. Why do we not have anything like that for the cannabis industry? Because as an owner-operator, I see everything day in and day out. I work every single day in my own business. So to be able to give my input of things that are over-regulated or things that we can fix to make things more efficient, why would we not have that?
And that was my concern is we have our own facilities. We deal with everybody deals with the industry as legislators, and it's nice to hear from you all, but if you guys would take the next step, you guys took the first step in Pinconning, a second to only Bangor, but it would be huge and successful if you guys come to us with because you're all having the same problem, And it's not till we get it out front and we talk about these situations and we actually can then fix it, help you fix it at the state level. So, thank you. Yes, sir. Representative McKinney?
Yeah, just want to ask, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this organization, but MICIA?
Yep, we're
Okay,
part of
great.
it.
You guys are, okay, good. Just wanted to make sure.
Proud members.
Yeah, I mean, they're a huge help too with anything that we have. We can bring it up to them. Great for legal advice because everything too, you know, like starting this from start to finish myself. I mean, I did majority of our paperwork to apply for our licenses myself too. There is not much out there for guidance on anything, you know, even at the level of building. We built our building ourselves, polished the floors, put the drop ceiling in, every single bit of equipment that's in our grow rooms because we obviously were operating on a budget too, you know, and we had to make this happen within that budget, and just guidance on how to be able to operate with CO2 in the rooms and make it where it's safe for our staff, but also we need CO2. We give off CO2, plants give off oxygen. We coexist, we need each other. And so just for little things like that, it would have been so much easier if we had more support from the CRA, because we have none right now.
That was my concern, is the support system, because we want businesses to be here, right? Like, so, are there any other, sitting here, right, you have the legislators here, is there anything that you guys see coming down the pipes that you want us to help you with?
I know that there's a proposed rule set out right now, and one of the things on there would they would have access to our cameras 24/7 at any single time, which we don't do anything wrong. We follow all the rules, but to us, it's like if you're sitting there watching those cameras, you could probably find somebody carrying a water in an area that they weren't, because we can't even have water down the grow hallway. Everything has to stay in our employee break room, which to me, why? Why can I not have a bottle of water down there for my employees to drink while they're working in a room that's 80 degrees, you know? It just doesn't make sense to me. There's just so many rules that just do not make sense.
And that's something that McKinney and I think that if they're going to apply that rule to you, I think we should apply that rule to them and see what they're doing at their facility. I think it's fair in business. I think that we need to start treating our department heads just like we treat our businesses.
Timmy, listen.
Okay.
I love you, brother.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you for being here today. And like I say, we'll make sure that we give you all your, everybody gets a card to check out your facility. It's right up off 75. They can hit it when they hit the Detroit conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
But there's no absent members here. There being no other further business, the meeting is adjourned.